From Washington to Utah, what a day. I'm Mark Stone in the Trump 100 studio in Washington, D.C. after a day outside the British Embassy up the road. Peter Mandelson, Lord Mandelson, our man in Washington, sacked by Prime Minister Keir Starmer over his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
And I'm James Matthews in the city of Orem, Utah, about 60 miles south of the state's capital, Salt Lake City. I'm at the site of the assassination of conservative influencer Charlie Kirk. As I speak, the assassin is still on the run.
Two stories of enormous significance in America today, on the day that the country marked one of its most tragic events to date, 9/11. So before we come to you, James, in Utah, we wanted to let you all know that we will be in your Trump 100 feed every day over the next week, Monday to Friday, covering the state visit, a state visit by Donald Trump to Windsor like no other. He will be back on British soil, meeting the Prime Minister, the King and the Queen, and I'll be there every step of the way with the Sky News team. A state visit with a different edge to it now, with an interim UK ambassador, after Peter Mandelson was given his marching orders on Thursday morning. And we'll get into that a little later in the podcast. But first, James, you're at the scene of a political assassination that has reverberated around the world.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. People here are shaken, there's no doubt about it. And the dynamics of this gathering for Charlie Kirk, they feed into that. The number of people who were there, 3,000 students who fled in panic. You know, they saw the horror of a man being shot before them, a man they'd come to see and with whom most felt a connection. Charlie Kirk, you know, he was a player, popular. Yes, he was MAGA, but he was a man who engaged across the divide. There is the shock here, I think, Mark, and a fear at what people experience. And I think there's also a degree of bereavement shared. His political friends and soulmates, you know, they certainly feel it. We've heard from the President and indeed from Vice President J.D. Vance, soulmate. He's actually coming to Utah to fly back on Air Force Two with the casket of Charlie Kirk, a last journey with his old buddy. So, you know, a deep sense of loss and a deep worry about where it all goes from here.
Yeah, and if the name Charlie Kirk seems unfamiliar to you, he is one of, if not the biggest young Christian right-wing influencers in the United States. He founded Turning Point USA, the largest youth activist organisation in the country, with an offshoot organisation now in the UK as well. He is one of those names that is ever present on millions of young people's social media timelines, famed for his strong belief in the First Amendment, the right to free speech, and the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. And it is a truly tragic coincidence that he was answering a question by a student on gun control when he was shot.
Is that fair to say? All right, great. So do you know how many transgender Americans have been mass shooters over the last 10 years?
Too many.
Okay. I just want to point out the lack of empirical evidence there. It's 5. Okay. Now 5 is a lot, right? I'm going to give you some credit. Do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years?
Counting or not counting gang violence?
And if you want to know more about Charlie Kirk, the man, the influencer, do listen to yesterday's podcast in which we talked to close friend and former Trump Deputy Press Secretary Hogan Gidley in the hours after the shooting. It is a fascinating listen to get his take on what this means for the country. But James, you were at the press conference this morning. What do we know?
Yeah, Mark, there was a lot in there. 7:30 in the morning. In Utah Valley University, classes closed, empty building, a building that had been searched room by room, of course, in the hunt for the assassin, but it was all cleared. Press conference with the FBI and with the Utah authorities, and they told us a few things. They told us about breakthroughs, as they put it. They have stuff to go on. They have a palm print from the shooter. They have a footwear impression. They also said they had something called a forearm imprint. Who knew that was a feature of forensic science now? But they've got that stuff because they know where he was. He was on a roof overlooking this kind of amphitheatre area where Charlie Kirk was. The shot was fired from 200 yards, and what happened was the shooter made a run for it, basically went back from the edge of the rooftop where he was, and headed across a road into woodland, and that's where a gun was found discarded. It was a hunting weapon, a bolt-action rifle. So, there is stuff to go on, but you know what, Mark? You get a sense of, and you'll know this, the chaos that comes in the aftermath of something like this. A scramble to look for evidence, to look for the suspect. Beyond that woodland, we knocked on a couple of doors, and there was a workman. He was doing reconstruction on a property. He said that yesterday, SWAT teams, the FBI, people with dogs descended on this property. They said, look, have you seen this guy? And they showed him a picture. And the guy we were speaking to, he says, well, yes, yeah, he came to the bottom of the garden. He said, look, I'm a student, I'm trying to get away from the Charlie Kirk shooting. Can I use this as a shortcut? And they of course said, yeah, sure. But he was looking at this image and it matched the individual. And he described him as a kind of Ozzy Osbourne lookalike.
So they've got leads.
A long leather coat, Ozzy Osbourne round shades, long greasy hair, he said, khaki pants. Now, we thought, well, that's fine. That's an eyewitness account. Of course, we were trying to check it. And of course, as a journalist, there's that pressure. You've got this development in the story, but clearly you have to authenticate it. At that moment, the FBI, they put out an image of a person of interest they actually want to chase. And I have to say, nothing like Ozzy Osbourne. Short hair, baseball cap, shades, yeah, but a sweater with the American flag and American eagle on it. That, as I speak, that's what they're describing as a person of interest, the person they want to speak to.
And James, clearly a clamour for information. People want to know what the authorities have gleaned. You got the first question.
So there you go, Mark. There were answers there, but there was no answer on this business of the rooftop. And, we remember Butler when there was a shooter on the rooftop who shot Donald Trump. There was security on site, but the question unanswered as of yet is, was that rooftop being monitored? And if not, why not? Because clearly they didn't have eyes on the shooter. And that right now appears to be a huge gap in security. Big question to answer.
James, I don't know if I'm reading too much into this, but you and I both know that America is a place where there are so many different security agencies, the FBI, the local police, and all the rest of it. And sometimes you feel like there's a bit of a sort of competition to get the information out there, to get the right information. Of course, we've got let's be honest, an unorthodox head of the FBI now, Kash Patel, a controversial candidate in his own right, who has now made his way from Washington to Utah.
Kash Patel, the first question to him will be about his social media postings. In the midst of the hunt for the assassin, he posted that the suspect had been taken into custody with a degree of certainty that the killer was caught and that we could all go about our lawful business. Later, he updated that with the suspect's been questioned and he has been released. So the killer had not been caught. And of course, when you hear a killer's been caught, that affects public behaviour. People feel safe. They go back out onto the streets. They gravitate perhaps back to the university. So why on earth was the head of the FBI, no less, tweeting something like that, which undermines public safety, undermines, I would suggest, his organisation?
James, you spoke to an eyewitness at the scene at Utah Valley University.
Yeah, Skylar Baird, who was on site, Mark, and he wasn't far from the tent where Charlie Kirk was shot dead. Skylar, he said that he dived into a fountain to try to put concrete, a structure between him and the gunman. So clearly he was shaken up. We bumped into him outside the hospital, 2.3 miles up the road. That's where Charlie Kirk was taken. They tried to save his life, but ultimately failed. You get a sense, Mark, of the upset that this has caused.
Now, Donald Trump spoke last night in an address from the Oval Office about the murder of Charlie Kirk. It was he who broke the news that Kirk had died on Truth Social, and he had this to say at a remembrance ceremony outside the Pentagon on the anniversary of 9/11.
Our prayers are with his wonderful wife, Eric, and his beautiful children. Fantastic people they are. We miss him greatly, yet I have no doubt that Charlie's voice and the courage he put into the hearts of countless people, especially young people, will live on. I'm pleased to announce that I will soon be awarding Charlie Kirk posthumously the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The date of the ceremony will be announced, and I can only guarantee you one thing, that we will have a very big crowd, very, very big.
The Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian award in America, first given posthumously to JFK in 1963. So, James, I guess beyond the manhunt and the police and FBI investigation, you know, this is a story, this is just a crime. This is a political assassination, and the political reverberations are huge.
Yes, it's certainly being portrayed as political violence, Mark, and, you know, across politics, people have been quick out of the gate to label it as such. Donald Trump certainly has pointed the finger of blame towards the radical left, as he would have it. Its rhetoric has brought about a terrorism in this country. I would say that as I speak, the assassin has not been caught. We don't know the identity of this individual, therefore we don't know their motive. So I think the public at large would do well to reserve judgment on whether this was political violence or not. But it is a point of danger. Charlie Kirk, you know, was a big player in Republican ranks. You have a president who is calling it political violence, and the question is how that will be interpreted by his MAGA base and others in a country which, of course, is armed to the teeth and where political violence is embedded and increasing.
Embedded and increasing on both sides. And I've been struck that the Trump administration has been quick to talk about the radical left lunatics, as Donald Trump said a short while ago. He is portraying this as only a problem on the left. But, you know, you only have to look at the evidence, and it is clearly a problem on the right as well. I mean, the man charged with the attempted assassination of Pennsylvania's Democratic governor, Josh Shapiro, he was a Trump supporter. The man who attacked the husband of Nancy Pelosi and assault in 2022, a Trump supporter. The men who wanted to hang Mike Pence after the January the 6th riots in 2021. A Trump supporter. So it works both ways. And, you know, I was talking in last night's podcast to our guest there, and he was saying to me, look, the left keep calling our president Trump. They keep calling him Hitler. Well, remember, J.D. Vance, when he wasn't such a fan of Donald Trump, he too described Donald Trump as akin to Hitler. So this works both ways. And I think the bottom line is that America is in a very dangerous place now, with political violence seemingly widespread and being normalized.
Yeah, Reuters did a survey, Mark, and they found that between January the 6th and the 2024 election, there had been at least 300 instances of political violence. And, you know, as we speak now, it's 9/11, a day when this nation comes together. And typically when there is something, you know, an atrocity like we saw in Utah yesterday, politicians do typically take a step back, come together in a mutual understanding that things have got bad and could get worse if they don't share a sense of unity and support and coalesce around reason. You know, I do wonder, and I feel it, I don't know about you, that America might well have passed that point. I think in the coming days, weeks and months, we will find out if that is the case and to what extent. Mark, while I've been in Utah, the Beehive State, you have been back in Washington, D.C., more familiar territory at the site of, well, what is a big story for the US and the UK. I'm Mandy, fire me.
Yeah, he's out. Absolutely extraordinary news. In the end, it happened really very quickly. Only 24 hours earlier, Sir Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, was in the Commons at the dispatch box defending the Prince of Darkness, Lord Mandelson.
Mr. Speaker, let me start by saying the victims of Epstein are the forefront of our minds. He was a despicable criminal who committed the most heinous crimes and destroyed the lives of so many women and girls. The ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret for his association with him. He's right to do so. I have confidence in him, and he's playing an important role in the UK-US relationship.
As it happened, James, I was up really early this morning. I was up at 5:45, and which was lucky because at 5:50 in the morning, Washington time, the news dropped from the British Foreign Office that indeed Mandy was out. And big news indeed. It, I think, is big political news in the UK because there are now serious questions for Keir Starmer, for Downing Street officials about just how much Keir Starmer knew about the close association, clearly close association, best pals between Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein. And if he knew, and it appears from our colleague Sam Coates' reporting that the security services had warned against this appointment of Mandelson as British ambassador, that he had effectively failed the vetting, and yet Starmer still appointed him. If that is true, it appears to be the case. Well, that is very damaging indeed, politically for Starmer, who, don't forget, lost his deputy prime minister just a few days before. It is a big story and a big challenge diplomatically as well, because Peter Mandelson was at the very heart of fostering the British-American relationship, the so-called special relationship. And actually, as you and I both know, James, on that, he had done really quite well. But this was always to be an appointment that was high risk, high reward. High risk because of all the controversy that has always surrounded Lord Mandelson. Wherever he goes, whatever he does, no one quite knew it was going to be quite this scandalous. But high reward because he is a pretty sharp operator, and he managed to get that trade deal, certainly put the UK in a very, very enviable position among other countries, all of them wanting to get as close to Trump as they can. Mandelson managed to do that, but this is a tricky time.
Yeah, I think what we've seen over the course of the last few days is the crystallising of the folly that we all knew was the appointment of Peter Mandelson, given his background, given his love, as he would put it, for Jeffrey Epstein, convicted sex trafficker and paedophile. And I tell you, as details have leaked out about impropriety, alleged impropriety, what I found interesting and not a great spectacle was Peter Mandelson saying in an arranged interview that, no doubt there would be more to come out about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And I thought to myself, well, hang on a minute, why don't you tell us what's going to come out between you and Jeffrey Epstein? And I think that's characteristic of what we've seen from Peter Mandelson, right, going back to my interview with him several months ago, when I gave him the opportunity to answer appropriate questions, and all we got was, well, I regret my association. Well, why did you have an association? Explain why you stayed in his apartment after he'd been convicted, and so much more. And yet he bent over backwards, essentially playing the survival game, but ultimately, dead man walking. He had to go, didn't he, before the state visit?
I was struck at what Harriet Harman said on Electoral Dysfunction, one of our other podcasts. Harriet Harman, of course, a Labour Party politician. She knows Peter Mandelson well, and she said he was never going to quit. He had to be pushed. I've got to know Peter Mandelson quite well over the course of the past few months. He is a thick-skinned man. He is very, very comfortable in his own skin. He thinks he's right, and he thinks he can survive. It was, I don't know how many years ago, when he, after quitting or being fired, he's been fired quite a few times, he then won the Hartlepool by-election, and he gave that famous phrase, "I'm a fighter, not a quitter." Well, he didn't quit this time. He was fired once again. He is the consummate spin doctor, but he couldn't spin his way out of this one.
Yeah, you can see, given those characteristics, why Donald Trump might take a liking to a Mark.
Yeah, absolutely. And James, you mentioned your interview with him. Wasn't it so obvious then that the reaction that you and I both got behind the scenes to that interview, that was at what we call a doorstep. You were told that he was going to be doing a speech. We could go down there. The communications team said, yeah, he'll take some questions off the back of the speech. So off you went. You asked questions about the speech, and then you asked him the question you wanted to ask about Epstein. And immediately, both you and I got angry messages messages from the embassy officials. That told us everything we needed to know. It wasn't just us. We've talked about it before. The Financial Times asked him questions. He told them to F off. It was so clear that he was very, very sensitive about this issue. And I was looking back at my messages today, and in the days after your interview with Mandelson, I got a message from a source at the embassy who said, and I'm quoting here, he was furious and you guys are in the deep freeze. And so we were on the naughty step for quite some time. That is so telling.
I do wonder, Mark, about the media ecosystem these days, the culture in which we operate. The Epstein relationship, paedophile, sex trafficker. As journalists, there's only one question that Peter Mandelson should be asked. And for Starmer, for the political Labour establishment not to recognise that astonishes me. And for the people around Lord Mandelson to think that we would ask anything other than that most appropriate and pertinent question is stunning to me.
So a massive issue, politically, a massive issue diplomatically. Peter Mandelson wrote a message, an email to all the staff at what is Britain's largest embassy. I'll read a bit of it to you. It says, the circumstances surrounding the announcement today are ones which I deeply regret. I continue to feel utterly awful about my association with Epstein 20 years ago and the plight of his victims. I have no alternative to accepting the Prime Minister's decision and will leave a position in which I have been so incredibly honoured to serve. And he went on to make the point, as we were making earlier, James, that he has, in terms of the diplomacy and in terms of the special relationship, he's been the custodian of that special relationship as Britain's ambassador, and it's gone pretty well. There's no doubt about that. But he has gone, and for now, James Roscoe, who is currently or was the deputy ambassador, he will now take over as ambassador until a new permanent person is found. James Roscoe, a career diplomat, he's been, as I say, Mandelson's number 2. He's worked deep in Downing Street as well. He's also worked, incidentally, for the royal household, working for both King Charles when he was the Prince of Wales and also the current Prince of Wales, Prince William. So he's well versed in all matters pomp. But remember, the state visit is going to be about much, much more than just pomp. And so the embassy here, the British government, they've got their work cut out if they want this state visit to go well. Because remember, when Starmer handed over that letter from the King to Trump for an unprecedented second state visit, it was all about diplomacy. It was about bringing Trump in, about trying to influence him, about trying to getting stuff out of him. And that is what they want to do on the state visit. Right, James, I've got a flight to catch now. What a build-up to an unprecedented state visit. Promises to be very important indeed.
Yeah, safe travels, Mark. We'll keep you across the latest on the manhunt for Charlie Kirk's assassin. Keep an eye on Sky News social and digital platforms. And you can, of course, stay up to date with our rolling TV news coverage.
And barring any breaking news, we will be back in your feed on Monday morning. Bye-bye for now.
Yeah, cheers, Mark. We'll see you all then.